In 1977, New York City celebrated the completion of the Citicorp Center. Within a year, the thousands of people working inside this sleek, modern marvel were unaware they were sitting in a towering death trap. The building's signature aesthetic was forced by a property dispute. St. Peter's Lutheran Church refused to move from its corner, so structural engineer William LeMessurier designed the 59-story tower to sit on 114-foot-high stilts. To clear the church, he moved the supports from the corners to the midpoints of each face. To control the sway created by this cantilever design, the roof housed a 410-ton tuned mass damper. If a severe storm knocked out the power, and that mechanical damper failed, the odds of the tower toppling over in any given year rose to 1 in 16. The mid-edge stilts that gave the Citicorp Center its striking, gravity-defying profile were exactly what threatened to bring 25,000 tons of steel crashing into Midtown Manhattan. The discovery of this flaw started with an undergraduate engineering student working on a homework assignment. The student calculated that the mid-face stilts would leave the building vulnerable to complex wind patterns and relate those concerns directly to LeMessurier. Building codes in New York only required engineers to calculate for winds hitting the flat face of a building head-on. Prompted by the student's questions, LeMessurier ran the numbers for quartering winds, gusts that strike the building diagonally, pressing against two sides at once. Because the supports were in the middle of the walls instead of the corners, these quartering winds routed immense pressure through the building's internal diagonal bracing. The math showed that this diagonal wind increased the strain on those braces by 40%. Normally, the steel framework could absorb that load, but LeMessurier realized the Manhattan construction team had approved a change to save money. Instead of securing the diagonal braces with full penetration welds, they had used bolted joints. Testing the bolted joints against the new quartering wind data, LeMessurier found that a 70-mile-per-hour gust could cause the bolts to shear off, triggering a total structural failure. By choosing bolts over welds, the builders had turned an abstract physics problem into a direct threat to the Manhattan skyline. Facing professional ruin, LeMessurier briefly considered suicide. He chose to confess instead, contacting Citicorp's executives to explain exactly how close their flagship tower was to collapsing. Citicorp immediately financed a desperate fix. Working with the city, they developed a plan to permanently secure the framework by welding 2-inch-thick steel plates over more than 200 bolted connections throughout the tower. To prevent a public panic, they treated the repair like a covert operation. All heavy welding was strictly restricted to the dead of night after the last employees had gone home. Starting at 5 p.m. every evening, construction crews swept into the empty offices. They tore up carpets and built plywood enclosures around the steel joints to contain the sparks. Because the welding generated thick clouds of smoke, the crew disabled the building's fire alarm system every night. By 4 a.m., a cleanup crew rushed in to erase all evidence of construction before the morning commute. For weeks, the Citicorp Center lived two lives. By day, it was a bustling corporate hub. By night, it was a secret emergency triage center fighting to keep the structure standing. By early September, the welds were only half finished when Hurricane Ella formed and tracked straight toward New York. The tower was still too weak to survive a direct hit. In secret, Citicorp coordinated with the Red Cross to draft an emergency evacuation plan for a 10-block radius surrounding the skyscraper. As the city sat hours away from triggering the evacuation, the storm shifted. Hurricane Ella turned eastward and veered out into the Atlantic. The tower stood because of the midnight reinforcements, but its survival ultimately rested on the unpredictable path of the wind. By October of 1978, the midnight welders had plated over the final joint. The retrofitted Citicorp Center was now strong enough to survive a 700-year storm. This massive emergency repair project inside a 59-story Manhattan skyscraper remained hidden from the public for decades. The building owners benefited from a historic stroke of luck. Right as the secret repairs began, an 88-day newspaper strike paralyzed New York's major papers. With no local reporters on the streets, no one investigated the welding torches visible every night. The secret held for nearly 20 years, until a 1995 exposé finally made the details public. providing a defining case study in professional engineering ethics. The Citicorp Center is a reminder of the hidden math holding up our cities. We live surrounded by towering infrastructure, rarely knowing how close those structures once came to the edge.